Have you ever had that nagging sense, deep down, that something in your life is off? You get up, you go to work, you keep yourself busy with family, with errands, with projects that fill the calendar. You scroll through your phone at night, you answer the texts, you check the emails. From the outside it looks fine, you're handling things, you're functioning, you're doing what's expected. But when the noise dies down, when you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling, there's that silence, that persistent whisper telling you that you're wasting your life. You might not even be able to put it into words. It shows up as exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, as a low-grade sadness that lingers no matter how many vacations you plan, as a kind of hollowness in the chest. You try to explain it away. You call it stress. Maybe you call it midlife burnout. Maybe a doctor calls it anxiety or depression. And sure, that label gives a little relief, because at least it has a name. But the truth is, it doesn't go away. That whisper is not random. That emptiness is not weakness. It's a signal. A signal that your soul, the part of you that wants a life with meaning, the part of you that doesn't care about how many emails you answer or how many likes you get, is being starved. Think about it. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness like it's a badge of honor. People brag about how little they sleep, how many hours they work, how many commitments they juggle. We reward ourselves for surviving the grind. But what if survival isn't the same as living? What if all this rushing, all this endless doing, is just a clever way to avoid the real question, why am I here? Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of us would rather not ask that question. Because once you ask it, you can't unhear the answer. And the answer might be brutal. Maybe the career you've poured 20 years into was never yours to begin with. Maybe the relationship you've been holding together out of duty has been draining the life out of you. Maybe the dream you're chasing isn't even your dream, it's one you inherited from your parents, or borrowed from Instagram, or accepted because everyone around you was chasing the same thing. No wonder you feel like a stranger in your own story. But here's the twist. That discomfort you've been trying to silence, whether with medication, or wine, or endless streaming shows at night, is not the problem. It's the invitation. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who saw deeper into the human soul than most, believed that what we call mental illness is often the psyche's attempt to heal itself. Read that again. What we call disorder, what we rush to suppress, may actually be the soul's way of waving a red flag saying, this life you're living is not serving me. Anxiety, depression, panic, that chronic emptiness, they're not always signs of dysfunction. Sometimes they're signs of misalignment. Think about your own life. Have you ever noticed how your body rebels when you force yourself into situations that betray who you really are? The headaches that show up every Sunday night before work. The exhaustion that hits after spending a weekend with people who drain you. The way your chest tightens when you agree to one more obligation you don't believe in. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's feedback. That's your inner self saying, stop ignoring me. And yet, most of us were never taught to listen. From childhood, we were trained to silence the scream. Don't complain. Don't disrupt. Don't dream too big. Be polite. Be productive. Be normal. And so we learn to push through, to adapt, to function. We put on the mask, we go through the motions, we check the boxes. And the world applauds us for it. Look how responsible you are. Look how reliable. Look how successful. But inside, a piece of you is suffocating. That's why so many people hit their 30s or 40s and suddenly feel this quiet crisis creeping in. On paper, you're fine. You've got the job, the house, the family, the gadgets. But when you look in the mirror, you don't recognize yourself anymore. You've been surviving on autopilot for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to actually live. And here's the thing, that moment of realization, it's terrifying, but it's also sacred. Because it means you're waking up. I want you to hear this clearly. That persistent emptiness is not here to destroy you. It's here to wake you up. It's the alarm clock of the soul, and you can only hit snooze for so long before the whole system breaks down. You've already felt it, the burnout, the disconnection, the nights where no amount of distraction could keep the silence from pressing in. You can drown it in work, drown it in entertainment, drown it in medication, but eventually the truth demands to be heard. And the truth is simple: the life you're living does not fit the person you truly are. Now, you might be thinking, great. That sounds profound, but what am I supposed to do with it? And that's the right question. Because awareness without action is just another form of suffering. The first step is this: stop dismissing your pain as a mistake. Stop calling your emptiness a weakness. Start seeing it for what it is, a signal. A signal that the story you've been telling yourself is not the story you were meant to live. Here's a challenge for you. Next time you feel that hollowness creep in, that sense of wasting your life, don't rush to silence it. Don't scroll past it, don't drown it out, don't run from it. Instead, sit with it. Ask it what it wants. Listen to the whisper instead of covering your ears. Because that whisper may be the only honest voice left in a world that keeps telling you to perform, to produce, to pretend. You're not crazy for feeling this way. You're not broken. You're not failing at life. In fact, the very fact that you feel it means you're alive, that some deeper part of you refuses to settle for a half-life. And that is good news. Because it means you have a choice. You can keep silencing the whisper until it turns into a scream, or you can start listening now. And listening is the first step to everything else we'll talk about: the trap of quick fixes, the danger of disconnection, the power of individuation. But it all starts here. With you. With the whisper you've been ignoring. With the courage to finally admit, I want more than just survival. Let's be honest. When most people finally gather the courage to talk about their pain, about the anxiety, the sleepless nights, the sense of being crushed under invisible weight, the system doesn't meet them with real understanding. What usually happens? You make an appointment, you sit in a doctor's office, you spill your heart out in 15 minutes or less. You try to explain that you're exhausted, that you can't concentrate, that there's this heaviness you can't shake. And what happens? A prescription gets printed, a label is attached to your suffering, and you're sent home with pills. Take one in the morning, one at night, and you'll feel better soon. Done. Just like that, your life, your pain, your story is reduced to a chemical imbalance. Now, don't get me wrong. Medication has its place. There are moments when it helps, when it pulls people back from the edge. But here's the danger: in our culture, medication and distractions have become the go-to solution, not a bridge toward deeper healing. Instead of asking, what is this pain trying to tell me, we ask, how fast can I shut it up? And that's the trap. Because pain isn't always meant to be silenced. Sometimes it's meant to be listened to. Think about how we deal with emotional pain in America. Feeling anxious? Pop a pill. Feeling sad? Binge a season of a show, drink a couple of glasses of wine, order DoorDash, scroll TikTok until 2 in the morning. Feeling empty? Buy something you don't need, book a trip you can't afford, chase that dopamine hit. Everything in our culture screams, don't feel it. Distract yourself. Stay productive. Keep going. And if you dare to slow down, if you dare to admit you're struggling, people look uncomfortable. Maybe you should just relax. Maybe you should try yoga. Have you tried being more positive? It's almost comical, if it weren't so tragic. Carl Jung saw this long before our modern wave of self-medication and distraction. He believed that the soul doesn't get sick because it's defective, it gets sick because it's ignored. When your deepest self is crying out that the life you're living doesn't fit who you are, the worst thing you can do is mute that cry. But that's exactly what the system encourages. You're not supposed to heal. You're supposed to function. You're supposed to keep showing up to the job you hate, to the relationships that drain you, to the routines that erase you. And if a pill can help you tolerate the intolerable, then the system calls that a win. But here's the problem. Silencing the symptom doesn't erase the cause. It's like covering the warning lights on your car's dashboard with tape. The lights aren't the problem, they're pointing to the problem. When you numb yourself with medication, with entertainment, with constant busyness, you're basically putting duct tape over the warning light. Sure, you don't see it anymore, but the engine is still failing underneath. And one day, it's going to break down for real. I know this is uncomfortable to hear. Because numbing is easy. Quick fixes are convenient. They let you keep moving, keep performing, keep pretending everything is fine. But ask yourself, is fine really what you want out of life? Do you want to be the person who survives Monday through Friday just to feel alive for a few hours on Saturday night? Do you want your tombstone to say, they functioned well? That's what quick fixes get you. They make you manageable, not alive. And here's the cost. The more you silence that inner voice, the more it rebels. Anxiety gets louder. Depression grows heavier. Your body starts to carry the weight, chronic fatigue, unexplained illnesses, panic attacks that hit you out of nowhere. It's not punishment. It's persistence. It's your soul refusing to be buried under routine. And yet the world keeps applauding your productivity. Look at how strong you are, holding it all together. But what they don't see is that you're falling apart in silence. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine someone trapped in a burning house. Instead of leading them out, we hand them noise-canceling headphones so they won't hear the fire alarm. That's exactly what happens when we treat existential pain with nothing but quick fixes. The alarm isn't the issue. The fire is. And if you don't face it, it will consume you. So ask yourself, what's your go-to fix? Do you pour another glass of wine to take the edge off? Do you throw yourself into work so you don't have to face the emptiness at home? Do you scroll through endless feeds so you won't hear the silence inside? Everyone has their drug of choice, and it's not always a pill. But whatever form it takes, the effect is the same. It delays the confrontation that could actually save you. Here's the truth Jung was trying to get us to see. Healing isn't about comfort. It's about courage. It's not about returning to normal, because maybe normal was the problem all along. It's about asking the hard questions. Why am I anxious? Why am I depressed? Why do I feel like I don't belong in my own life? What is this pain trying to tell me? Quick fixes can't answer those questions. Only you can. Only honesty can. Only the willingness to face what you've been running from can. And yes, that journey is painful. It means sitting with feelings you've avoided for years. It means confronting truths you'd rather bury. It means realizing that the life you've built may not actually be your life at all. That's scary. But what's scarier is staying asleep, staying numb, staying trapped in a cycle of endless distraction until one day you look back and realize you never really lived. So here's my challenge for you. Stop making your first instinct silence. The next time anxiety shows up, the next time sadness grips you, resist the urge to reach for the fix. Instead, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what is this really about? You may not get the full answer right away, but even asking the question is an act of rebellion against a culture that wants you to stay sedated. It's the first crack in the wall you've built around yourself. Because in the end, quick fixes don't heal. They only delay. Healing starts when you decide to face the fire instead of covering your ears. And when you do, you'll discover something shocking. That pain you feared so much? It's not your enemy. It's your guide. It's the part of you that refuses to let your life be wasted. If we're going to talk honestly about what's really eating people alive today, we have to name the real enemy. And no, it's not simply stress, or genetics, or even the economy. It's disconnection. Not disconnection from the internet, not disconnection from your phone, but something far deeper, disconnection from yourself. Think about it. How many people do you know who seem to be doing everything right? They've got the job, the marriage, the house, the kids, maybe even the car they always wanted. They post smiling pictures on Facebook, they celebrate birthdays with the perfect cake, they check every box. From the outside, their lives look like a success story. But when you sit down and talk to them, when the surface polish wears off, you hear something else. You hear exhaustion. You hear loneliness. You hear that nagging sense that none of it feels real. And if you're honest, you probably recognize the same in yourself. Carl Jung had a word for this. He said that when the life you are living does not align with the life your soul needs, you get sick. Not sick in the way of catching a cold, but sick in the way that your whole being starts to rebel. Anxiety, depression, burnout, these aren't just medical conditions. They're often signs that you've been living disconnected from your own truth for too long. They're the body and the mind shouting, "This isn't working. You're betraying me." Look at how modern culture conditions us. From childhood, we're taught to compete, to perform, to please. Get the grades, go to the right school, land the safe job. We're told to be efficient, to be useful, to fit into a mold that was designed before we even had a chance to ask, "Who am I? What do I actually want?" And here's the result, a life that looks good on paper but feels hollow in reality. How does disconnection show up? It shows up when you climb the career ladder but secretly feel like you're wasting your talents. It shows up when you stay in a relationship because it's familiar, even though it drains you. It shows up when every day feels like a copy of the one before, and you can't remember the last time you felt truly alive. You keep smiling in the family photos, but inside you know you're not living your life, you're performing it. And here's the dangerous part. Our culture applauds this performance. It doesn't care if you're disconnected. In fact, it prefers it that way. Because a disconnected person is easier to control. Disconnected people keep consuming. They buy things they don't need to fill a hole that never gets filled. They chase approval because they don't know their own worth. They overwork because they don't have a deeper reason to say no. They follow trends instead of carving their own path. They are useful to the system, but they are miserable inside. Jung believed that this misery wasn't a flaw, it was a signal. He said neurosis is often the soul's protest, the way your inner self fights back against the false life. That panic attack you thought was random? Maybe it's the moment your body couldn't tolerate another day of pretending. That emptiness you feel in the middle of a family dinner? Maybe it's your soul reminding you that you've been playing a role instead of being yourself. The problem isn't that you're broken. The problem is that you've been disconnected from the truth of who you are. Let me ask you a question. How much of your life is truly yours? Not the version you show on LinkedIn, not the version you present at Thanksgiving dinner. I mean the real one. Are your goals, or were they handed down to you by family, by culture, by society's endless list of shoulds? Do you even remember the last time you chose something purely because it mattered to you, not because it was safe, or expected, or respectable? That's where disconnection hides, and all the places where you gave up pieces of yourself just to fit in. And the longer you stay disconnected, the worse the symptoms get. At first it's just a whisper, fatigue, boredom, restlessness. Then it becomes louder, anxiety, depression, burnout. And if you ignore it long enough, it becomes a collapse. Your soul will do whatever it takes to get your attention. And that's not because it wants to punish you. It's because it refuses to let you waste your life living someone else's script. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, I get it. I'm disconnected. But how do I reconnect? How do I find my way back to myself? That's the million-dollar question. And the answer is not easy. Because reconnection requires honesty. Brutal honesty. It means admitting that maybe the life you built isn't the life you want. It means questioning the story you've been telling yourself, the one you've been selling to everyone else. And it means listening to that quiet voice inside, the one you've drowned out for years, long enough to hear what it's been saying all along. Here's the key. Disconnection thrives in silence. As long as you keep pretending, as long as you keep numbing, as long as you keep going through the motions, it has power over you. But the moment you stop and admit, this isn't me. This isn't my life, something shifts. That's the first step toward healing. That's when the energy you've been using to maintain the mask can finally go toward building a life that feels real. So let me challenge you right now. Take inventory. Where in your life are you disconnected? Where are you saying yes when you mean no? Where are you smiling while dying inside? Where are you staying quiet when your soul is screaming for change? Write it down if you have to. Because naming the disconnection is the first act of reconnection. And remember this, the enemy is not inside you. The enemy is the gap between who you are and how you're living. Close that gap, and watch how quickly the anxiety, the depression, the emptiness begin to shift. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to become someone new. You just need to come back to yourself. And that is exactly where the real healing begins. There comes a point where you realize that simply numbing the pain, or blaming the culture, or acknowledging disconnection isn't enough. Awareness is important, but awareness without action is paralysis. Sooner or later you have to decide, am I going to keep playing this role, or am I going to take the hard road back to myself? This road has a name. Carl Jung called it individuation. And no, it's not self-help fluff or a couple of hacks to improve your morning routine. Individuation is something much deeper, much heavier, and far more liberating. What is it really? Individuation is the process of becoming whole. Not perfect. Not polished. Whole. It's the moment you stop living as a reflection of everyone else's expectations, your parents, your boss, your partner, your culture, and you start becoming who you actually are. Sounds simple, but it's not. Because the first step isn't about adding things to your life. It's about confronting what you've spent decades trying to hide. This is where the shadow enters. Jung's idea of the shadow wasn't about evil in some dramatic Hollywood sense. It was about all the parts of yourself that you've denied, repressed, or buried. The anger you were taught was unacceptable. The jealousy you don't want to admit. The grief you've locked away because it makes you look weak. The desires that don't fit the good version of you. All of it lives in the shadow. And here's the thing, as long as you ignore it, it runs your life from the dark. You think you're in control, but your shadow is pulling the strings. Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating the same toxic relationship patterns, no matter how much you promise yourself you'll do better next time? Why you blow up at small things when you're stressed? Why you sabotage yourself right when things start going well? That's the shadow at work. The parts of you that you refuse to face find their way out anyway. Jung said it clearly, what you do not make conscious will come back as fate. And isn't that what so many of us feel, that life is repeating itself in cycles we don't understand? Facing your shadow is terrifying, but it's also the only path to freedom. Think of it this way. If you spend your whole life pretending you're not angry, that anger doesn't disappear. It seeps out as resentment, as passive aggression, as bitterness. But the moment you admit, yes, I have anger. Yes, it's part of me, you stop being its victim. You start using its energy. The same goes for jealousy, fear, shame, desire. The shadow isn't there to destroy you. It's there to complete you. And this is where individuation becomes sacred. Because it's not just about therapy sessions or journaling or meditation, though those can all help. It's about a willingness to see yourself as you truly are, without the filters, without the excuses, without the Instagram gloss. It's about stepping into the ring with your own darkness and saying, I'm not running anymore. And when you do, something incredible happens. The very parts of you that once sabotaged you become sources of strength. Anger becomes fuel for courage. Fear becomes a compass for growth. Grief becomes a doorway to compassion. You stop being split in half. You start becoming whole. But make no mistake, this is not the easy path. Most people will avoid it for their entire lives. They will choose comfort over clarity, sedation over awakening. They will say, this is just who I am, without realizing they've never even met their true self. Because individuation requires a kind of bravery that can't be faked. It asks you to question everything, your career, your marriage, your faith, your story. It asks you to let go of the roles that no longer fit and step into a life that may look smaller from the outside but feels infinitely bigger inside. I know this sounds heavy, and it is. But here's the paradox, the pain of individuation is also the path to joy. Because when you stop fighting against yourself, when you reconcile with every part of who you are, you finally stop wasting energy on the war within. You gain clarity. You gain direction. You gain a kind of inner strength that no one can take from you. Imagine waking up in the morning knowing that your choices reflect your truth, not someone else's script. That's what individuation gives you. And here's the irony. While the world tells you to improve, Jung told us to become whole. The world says, be perfect, be efficient, be admired. Individuation says, be real. The world says, fit in. Individuation says, be free. And isn't that what so many of us are starving for? Not another productivity hack, not another title, not another validation from people who don't even know us. We're starving for wholeness, for authenticity, for a life that feels like ours. So let me ask you directly, what's in your shadow? What truth are you refusing to look at because you're afraid it will ruin the image you've built? What pain are you still running from that's been chasing you for years? What would happen if, instead of hiding it, you faced it head on? Because that is the work. That is the road back to yourself. It's not comfortable. It's not quick. But it is the only road worth walking. Because at the end of it, you stop being a puppet of your unconscious and start being the author of your own destiny. You stop living as half a person and start living as a whole human being. That's the hard road. That's individuation. And once you step onto it, there's no going back, only forward, only deeper, only truer. Let's talk about what may be the greatest silent epidemic of our time. Not heart disease. Not cancer. Not even anxiety or depression as we normally define them. The epidemic I'm talking about is meaninglessness. It's everywhere. You can see it in the blank stares during morning commutes, and the endless scrolling late at night, and the way people talk about their lives with a tone that sounds more like survival than joy. You can see it in the fact that so many of us wake up with everything we thought we wanted, steady job, house, family, gadgets, and still feel like something vital is missing. And here's the brutal truth. For millions of people, the problem isn't that they're weak. The problem is that they're living lives that lack meaning. They're running on empty routines that look good on the outside but feel hollow inside. It's not serotonin that's missing. It's direction. It's not dopamine. It's purpose. Carl Jung understood this decades ago. He saw that much of modern suffering didn't come from some flaw in the brain but from a loss of meaning in people's lives. He said that when people discovered a why to live, they could endure almost anyhow. Think about that for a second. You can handle pain, setbacks, and struggle if you know what you're suffering for. But if life feels like a treadmill, if it feels like you're just checking boxes without any deeper purpose, then even the smallest obstacles crush you. And isn't that exactly what we see all around us today? People exhausted not just from doing too much, but from doing things that don't matter. We live in a culture that glorifies success but forgets the soul. We chase numbers, money, likes, followers, promotions, as if they'll finally prove that we're enough. But the more we chase, the emptier we feel. Because those things can't give meaning. They can only give distraction. And when the distraction wears off, the emptiness comes rushing back. Look around. You'll notice it everywhere. A man pours 30 years into a career only to retire and realize he never lived for himself. A woman sacrifices her own dreams to keep the peace in her family, only to feel invisible in her own home. Parents push their kids into paths that look respectable but leave those kids quietly miserable. On the surface, everyone is functioning. But underneath, they're dying of hunger, not for food, but for meaning. This is why so many people hit their 40s and 50s and suddenly feel lost. They've reached the point where all the external milestones have been checked off, but there's no fire left inside. They've been living someone else's script. And here's the painful part, they don't even know what their own story would be if they started writing it. Meaninglessness doesn't just steal your joy. It eats away at your soul. It makes you numb. You stop caring. You stop dreaming. You go through the motions, but inside you're already gone. And what does society offer as a solution? More distractions. More consumption. Another Netflix series, another gadget, another motivational cliche slapped on a coffee mug. But none of that fills the void, because the void isn't outside, it's inside. Jung believed that the cure for this epidemic wasn't comfort or distraction. It was courage. The courage to face yourself, to ask the terrifying but necessary question, what is my life really about? Not what looks good, not what pleases others, not what pays the bills, but what gives me a reason to wake up in the morning with fire in my chest. And that question alone is enough to shake the foundations of your life. Because if the answer doesn't line up with the way you're living now, you're faced with a choice: keep pretending or start changing. So let me ask you directly. What's your why? Can you name it? Can you say, without hesitation, what makes your life worth living? If you can't, don't feel ashamed. Most people can't. That's why the epidemic is everywhere. But if you're willing to start searching for it, you're already ahead of the game. Because most people would rather stay asleep, numbed out, than face the emptiness. Finding meaning doesn't mean you need a grand cosmic mission. It doesn't mean you have to save the world or write a best-selling book. Sometimes it's as simple as aligning your daily life with your inner truth. Doing work that reflects your values. Building relationships that give energy instead of stealing it. Creating, giving, loving, contributing in ways that make your soul feel alive. Meaning doesn't have to be flashy. But it has to be real. And here's the kicker. Once you find it, everything changes. Struggles stop being pointless suffering and start being growth. Setbacks stop being evidence that you're failing and start being part of the journey. Even pain takes on a different shape. Because if you know why you're here, you can endure almost anything. Without that meaning, even the most comfortable life feels unbearable. So the question is not whether you'll suffer in life. You will. The question is whether your suffering will be meaningless or meaningful. Will it be wasted in routines that don't matter, or will it forge you into the person you're meant to become? That choice is in your hands. The epidemic of meaninglessness is real. You can see it all around you. But it doesn't have to consume you. You don't have to live half asleep, dragging yourself through obligations that kill your spirit. You can choose to stop. You can choose to ask the harder questions. You can choose to align your life with truth, not appearances. And that choice, more than any pill, any paycheck, or any distraction, is what heals. At some point, the excuses run out. The distractions lose their shine. The medication dulls the edge but leaves the emptiness untouched. The truth you've been avoiding sits in front of you like an unwelcome guest that refuses to leave. And in that moment, you face the choice. Not just any choice, the choice. The one that decides whether you keep living anesthetized, or whether you wake up and start living authentically. This is the crossroad every human being eventually reaches. And it doesn't always arrive with fireworks or dramatic breakdowns. Sometimes it comes quietly. You're sitting in traffic and suddenly realize you don't even like the life you're rushing back to. You're at a dinner with friends, laughing at the right times, but you feel like a ghost in your own body. You wake up one morning and look in the mirror, and the person staring back at you feels like a stranger. That's the moment. That's when you know the life you've built no longer fits the person you are inside. And here's where fear shows up. Because making the choice to change feels like jumping off a cliff with no guarantee of a parachute. It means giving up the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar is killing you. It means facing the possibility of loss, losing approval, losing relationships, losing a version of yourself that others depended on. No wonder most people avoid it. They tell themselves, it's not that bad. I can keep going like this. But deep down they know. Pretending is also a choice, and it's the choice that keeps them small. Carl Jung said the greatest privilege of life is to become who you truly are. But he also knew it's the most avoided path, because it demands a kind of honesty and courage that few are willing to embrace. Think about it. To truly change, you have to confront your shadow. You have to admit the lies you've told yourself. You have to question the values you inherited from others. You have to stop blaming your past, your parents, your boss, your circumstances, and take ownership of your soul. That's not comfortable work. But comfort was never the point. Freedom is. So what does this choice look like in real life? Sometimes it looks like walking away from a job that pays well but suffocates your spirit. Sometimes it looks like setting boundaries in relationships that drain you. Sometimes it looks like finally admitting you don't believe in the story you've been selling about yourself and daring to write a new one. And sometimes it's as small as choosing to sit in silence instead of drowning your pain in another distraction. Every act of honesty, every act of alignment, is a step out of anesthesia and into awakening. But let me be clear. Choosing authenticity doesn't mean everything gets easier. In fact, it might get harder. People may not understand you. Some may resent you. The path of individuation, of becoming whole, often feels lonely at first because you're breaking free from the herd. You're no longer living to please. You're no longer playing the safe role. And that unsettles people who benefit from your compliance. But here's the payoff. While you may lose approval, you gain something far greater, yourself. And once you have that, you are unshakable. Imagine living a life where your choices reflect your truth instead of your fear. Imagine no longer asking for permission to exist as you are. Imagine waking up and feeling a sense of alignment, even if it scares you, even if it challenges you, even if it costs you. That's what happens when you make the choice. You stop surviving and you start living. You stop betraying yourself and you start honoring yourself. You stop chasing someone else's version of success and you begin building a life that actually matters to you. So let me ask you directly, what do you need to let go of to start truly living? What's the lie you keep telling yourself to stay comfortable? What mask do you keep wearing to keep the peace when you know it's suffocating you? Until you confront those questions, nothing will change. But the moment you do, the moment you choose truth over pretense, you've already won. Because even if the road ahead is hard, it's real. And real will always beat numb. Here's the final truth I want you to take with you. Most people will keep numbing themselves. They'll keep scrolling, keep buying, keep pretending until the day they die. They'll choose sedation over awakening because it's easier. But you don't have to. You can choose differently. You can choose to stop wasting your existence. You can choose to build a life that reflects your soul instead of betraying it. And that choice, your choice, is the most powerful act of rebellion against a world that thrives on your disconnection. It won't be easy. It won't be painless. But it will be worth it. Because nothing is stronger than an awakened soul. Nothing is more unstoppable than a person who knows who they are and refuses to live a borrowed life. And that can be you. The choice is in front of you right now. Pretend or awaken. Anesthetize or live. Which one will you make? Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below. I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.